Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my Week 2 Top 25 predictions. There are some non-top 25 games that I think are pretty interesting that I chose to include. I also left out some top 25 games because they're just against nobodies. But let's not say too much. A like and subscribe would help. A comment always helps. Let's get straight into this. So starting off, you've got the biggest game of the week, Texas at Michigan, a game that was I'd say way more anticipated than it is now, because after the first week of football, Texas looked super dominant and Michigan struggled against Fresno State. Pretty much they required a pick six, like a 80-something yard pick six return to put the game away against Fresno State, which is not a good look, especially if it's at the big house. That's not a good look for Michigan, whereas Texas, they just shut out Colorado State. So, I mean, of course, that's expected, but at least they did what they expected. The only reason there was, any sort of, for me, there was any reason I would actually consider taking Michigan in this game would be because it's at the big house. But Texas last year went into the Crimson Tide and stunned the world. This time they won't stun the world. I think they'll just win when expected to win. I've got them beating them up pretty good because Michigan's offense does not look to be that good. And ultimately, Texas is just a more complete team. It's a more complete team. You've got Quinn Ewers still at quarterback. And, I mean, Michigan is really just about their defense. So, if anything, I think this game will be lower scoring until, kind of like how Georgia versus Clemson was. Up until that fourth quarter, things might slip away from Michigan, and Texas might take this one handily. I don't really think there's any room for upset here. Bowling Green at Penn State, I included some fart games just because I was kind of going through the list. I was just going AI mode. Expect Penn State to cover this. Nothing said. Nothing needs to be said. Arkansas at Oklahoma State. I see an absurd amount of people picking Arkansas in this game. I even saw an absurd amount of people picking South Dakota State over Oklahoma State. What is up with the Oklahoma State hate, ladies and gentlemen? Why are we not giving this team any form of credit? I feel like it is rude. This team made the Big 12 championship last year after starting off the year with a loss to South Alabama. They've got Ollie Gordon, who's one of the best running backs in the league, and Alan Bowman is a solid quarterback. He put up so many good games last year. There were just that game against UCF. That was their stinker of last year. And does that burden really hang over Oklahoma State that much to where people are actually picking Arkansas in this game? Arkansas killed AR Pine Bluff 70-0. Oklahoma State killed San Diego State, who is number 1 in FCS. So, I mean, who first off had the more impressive first game? 1,000% Oklahoma State. And overall, who is in the top 25? Oklahoma State. And who has just more proven themselves year in, year out? Oklahoma State. Arkansas was hideous last year. They're not going to be any much better this year. This is going to be Oklahoma State's ball game. I don't know why people are picking Arkansas. And you know what? If I'm wrong, you can come laugh at me then. But, really, why are we actually picking Arkansas in this game? It doesn't make any sense to me. The Oklahoma State hate needs to stop. It is disrespectful. Kansas State at Tulane. This one is actually interesting because Kansas State definitely struggled to put away UT Martin for a while. They finally pulled away, winning 41-60, but it took all 4 quarters to put up those 41 points. For a while, UT Martin was in that football game. Tulane handled business. And I just think people might be forgetting about Tulane after their, I think is 2022. After their insane 2022 year, the green wave is starting to fall into forgotten land because they didn't live up to the same level that they did in 2022. They didn't live up to that last year. But Kansas State has to hit the road. And Avery Johnson, I mean, he had an all-right debut, but it's against UT Martin. It wasn't the best thing ever. And a lot of people gave this Kansas State quarterback hype. And I kind of, I didn't really like it. I didn't trust it. I would just wait to be proven wrong at least. But he didn't look too good in that first game. I don't know how good of a team Tulane is, but they are receiving votes to be ranked. So I mean, I'll give it to Kansas State, but to be expect this one to be a bit closer than you'd like it to be. Kansas State blows them out. Kansas State might be for real. But I think this one will be closer than people would like it to be. Georgia Tech at Syracuse. Georgia Tech finally gets in the top 25. And after me getting ahead of myself and just losing my marbles because Florida State lost to this team, Florida State ended up turning around and losing by even more to Boston College in Florida State's home stadium. So Georgia Tech barely completing a 3-point upset over them, upset at the time, versus Boston College's annihilation. Is Georgia Tech really a top 25 team, or is Florida State really, really bad? Georgia Tech did handle Georgia State, which I think was actually a semi-underrated win, but Syracuse actually, with Kyle McCord at quarterback, I think Syracuse is actually being overlooked, even by myself included in my ACC prediction video. I kind of forgot about Syracuse. I dissed them, but I forgot about them, and they didn't look too bad, in their first game. They let Ohio score 22 points, but they held a lot of those to field goals, which was their defense showing up when their defense needed to and holding them to as little points as possible. I mean, those 3 drives turned into touchdowns. Ohio wins that, but instead, their defense showed up when they needed to. I know it's Ohio, but Ohio actually they beat Iowa State last year, who was a pretty decent team in the Big 12. Ohio isn't a team to be overlooked, in Syracuse, ultimately, their offense showed up as much as they needed to, but I will give a little bit of a nod to their defense for stopping them when they needed to. Georgia Tech's 2 games are not really as impressive. Ohio is Ohio, but still, Georgia Tech now looks like they've played 2 teams on the same level as Ohio in the first place. You have to hit the road against Syracuse, and Syracuse seems to have a pretty high-powered offense, whereas Georgia Tech has a pretty strong defense, what it looks like. Georgia Tech has a pretty strong defense. I do like Georgia Tech's offense, but it kind of is a little questionable with their quarterback. I'm not really too sure if I like him or if I dislike him, but I think Syracuse is going to win this one. It's going to be good offense versus good defense, and then mid offense versus mid defense. And I think Syracuse has got that home field on them. Remember, Syracuse had that one year where they got up to number 14 or something, and they were 6-0. Syracuse has been building something over there for a bit, and now they've got a quarterback to do it. A lot of people hated on Kyle McCord, which was kind of rightfully so. He didn't fit the shoes of Ohio State, but he's taking a step down to a team he might be better at. He's definitely, he wasn't Ohio State level quarterback, but he definitely is Syracuse level quarterback, and he can get stuff done there. I think Syracuse might win this in an upset and maybe make their name known. After all, the line is only 2.5 for Georgia Tech anyways, so it's kind of expected to be close. Tennessee Tech at Georgia. Why did I even include this game? Give me Georgia. I don't even know why I included it. NIU at Notre Dame. Why did I even include this game? Give me Notre Dame. I just put up random scores for this. Baylor at Utah. I was kind of thinking about this one. At first, when I saw it, I was like, okay, I think this one might be a non-conference matchup, considering this was a non-conference matchup last year, and Utah would have one more conference game than the rest of the Big 12. Same with Baylor. Same with U of A and Kansas State. I think all those games are considered non-conference, though, which is interesting. But Baylor has to hit the road and play Utah. Utah struggled with Baylor last year, but I think Baylor this year is playing a much, much better. They're playing a much better Utah team, a much more complete team. And Baylor, they do have some sort of dual threat quarterback, but they've definitely got some work to do before they can even really give Utah a hard time. I think this is going to be a match, however, first one of the year where Baylor, they're going to give it their all. They're ready for this match. They knew about this match the whole season, and it's right now. They're going to give it their all. Utah as well. I mean, they're not really anticipating Baylor, but it's their first, it is a conference opponent. Even though it's a non-conference, it is a conference opponent. So Utah is going to have a full stadium. I don't think Utah is going to anticipate this team. They're just going to roll like it's a practice game, but Baylor might make it semi-interesting, maybe with like a touchdown at the start. Literally, that's it, and then like a touchdown at the end. But I think Utah's got this one in the bag. Iowa State at Iowa. Hear me out. I think Iowa State's relatively underrated. I looked at the North Dakota game, and what looked like Iowa State's problem was their running game, which is obviously a problem because they didn't do very much. They didn't really run the ball a whole lot, it didn't seem like, but when they did, it wasn't really anything special. Iowa State ended up walking away with a 21-3 win over North Dakota, which isn't impressive at all, especially for a team that has gotten some notice from the fans. But I don't think that's – I just think right now we need to divert our attention from that because Iowa State started off the same way last year. They didn't show out in their first non-conference game against like Ohio. And they managed to turn things around and actually be a pretty good team. I think Iowa State beating North Dakota has learned and hits the road against their rival Iowa, who they just cannot seem to get over this team. They constantly lose by tiny margins. We know Iowa's going to have a good defense, but their offense is going to be a massive question. Going into halftime, Iowa against Illinois State, it was 6-0. Their defense their offense finally figured stuff out in the second half, which 3 of those points in the first half, I believe, were because of a fumble by Illinois State, which put them straight into field goal range. That game could have been 3-0 going into halftime. Iowa is going to have a good defense. We always know this. They have a great defense, but their offense is hideous, and their offense only put up as many points as they did because it was against Illinois State. Iowa State is going to be able to clamp down on the Iowa offense. However, I think Iowa State's offense is actually going to best the Iowa defense. Don't ask how we get to 21-20 because I couldn't tell you. There might be 7 safeties scored by Iowa and then 2 field goals. Who knows? But Iowa State, I think this is going to be their time, their year where they finally get over the hump and they beat their team, their rival, on the road. I'm taking Iowa State. Virginia at Wake Forest. Not a top 25 matchup, but I actually thought this one was kind of interesting because I do believe this is a conference game, even though it's kind of earlier in the year. But right now, when you look at the ACC, you've got Miami, who stands above the pack at number 12. But then at number 22, 23, 24, 25, it's like Louisville, Georgia Tech, North Carolina State. There you go. And Clemson. I did that all from my brain. Look at me go. You've got a lot of low-end teams that are just outside of the top 25. North Carolina State, they looked awful in their first game, barely pulled away in the fourth quarter. Clemson got clobbered. Even though they have a really good defense, their offense is questionable, and they got clobbered by Georgia. Louisville, they haven't proved themselves yet. I believe that could be a team that finishes in the top 25, but they kicked the crap out of a nobody. And Georgia Tech, they're questionable because their reason for ranking is a win against Florida State. That happened at the start of the year. I think these two teams, this game and games going forward, controls their destiny. You also have Virginia Tech on the other side of things, who is they just lost to Vanderbilt. They were a team that a lot of people had being as one of the best teams, including myself, and they just opened up the year with a loss on the road at Vanderbilt. I think Virginia, both of these teams definitely control their destiny, and it starts with this game, but I think Virginia is going to hit the road and beat Wake Forest. I liked what I saw from their quarterback last year, and Virginia lost a lot of close games last year, as well as they won some impressive games like that road win against North Carolina. They also only lost by like 3 points last-second field goal against North Carolina State, who finished off ranked. Virginia completely glossed over last year. They ended up being one of the worst teams, 3-9 or something like that, but they had an impressive win in a lot of close games. I think they have finally built something up that nobody is paying attention to. And right now, if you look at Virginia's schedule, if I can pull it up here, if you look at Virginia's schedule, they control their destiny to make their name known in the ACC and potentially be one of the best teams in the ACC. I actually think that this team has the power to do it, along with Syracuse. Virginia at Wake Forest, this one. The line was 2 yesterday. It's down to 1 by Wake Forest. They don't even have the confidence to favor Wake Forest right now. Virginia hosts Maryland. A lot of people have Maryland being a good team, but I think Virginia might win that game. Virginia at Coastal Carolina. I originally in the ACC predictions had Virginia losing this game, but I think they might. I'm not sure. I don't know anything about Coastal Carolina. They beat Jacksonville State on the road 55-27. I don't know anything about that. I don't know what that means. It looks like Coastal Carolina is the heavy favorite though. Boston College at Virginia. Oh my God, at Virginia. That one might be tough because Boston College, proved themselves on the road against Florida State. But really, is Florida State anything special? But I do think Boston College is also a pretty good team in the ACC. If Virginia manages to win those 4 games, they will start 5-0, and then they get to host Louisville, which if you have a ranked Virginia team in the first place, or just a relatively good Virginia team, the fans will show up, and that's going to be a statement game. Virginia wins that game, they go 6-0, and all of a sudden, they are on top of the ACC world. They do have to hit the road and play Clemson, which I don't think they'll win, but the rest of the schedule is seemingly easy. Their next hardest game is at Notre Dame, and that's going to be a loss for sure. And then the hardest game after that would be on the road at Virginia Tech, but that game doesn't even look that hard. If Virginia plays these first games properly and manages to go 6-0, they could be a 2-loss team at the end of the year. Isn't that crazy? You probably think I'm talking out of my ass right now, but I genuinely think it is a possibility for Virginia football this year. Mark my words. If I'm wrong, come laugh at me. Whatever. USF at Alabama. Why'd I even include it? Big domination. Kansas at Illinois. This one is a little interesting to me, at least, because of how bad of a take it is by the money line. Kansas is only favored by 5.5 against the Fighting Illini, who was hideous last year and really didn't do anything special against their opponent. I mean, both of them absolutely killed nobodies. But Kansas, we know their quarterback is good. We know their running back is good. And we know their defense is pretty stellar, bro. Like, Kansas has, these recent years, managed to remain a top 25 team without their starting quarterback due to injuries. Jalen Daniels is back, and they have to hit the road and play Illinois, and we're only favoring them by 5.5. Kansas is going to dominate. I'm sorry. Kansas is a good-ass football team. I have them being a one-loss team this year. I'm sorry, not sorry. I have Kansas being a one-loss team this year. I think they might be one of the best teams in the Big 12. Come laugh at me if I'm wrong. Kansas. Colorado at Nebraska. Had to include this one because it's Colorado, of course. But let's just cut to the chase. I think Nebraska is going to win this one. This might be like a fart time last-minute touchdown, 2-point conversion type of deal. But Nebraska is going to have that full stadium in a rivalry. Of course, it's also prime time, so even more anticipation. If Nebraska didn't already sell out before, they're selling out now. They're gonna put up little chairs up on this top deck where my mouse is. They're gonna put little chairs up there so they can just fit more fans. They're gonna get everybody up on the line of scrimmage. They're gonna have the biggest game in college football history because those Cornhusker fans are loyal as balls. But not only that, it is the biggest game of the year for them. But Nebraska's gonna win this one. Sorry, not sorry. Tennessee at NC State. I originally had North Carolina State winning this one because I didn't know anything about Tennessee football, and I just thought it was a fun game at North Carolina State to start off the year. But I watched a lot of that North Carolina State. I watched a lot of that NC State versus West Carolina or something game, and NC State looked like they were lost. They looked like they had no clue what they were doing, and they just didn't. They didn't know what they were doing. Tennessee, on the other hand, absolutely handled their opponent. I don't have faith in NC State anymore. I'm taking Tennessee. It might be tough just because, NC State's going to have that home field and grit, but Tennessee could absolutely obliterate this team on the other side of things. Tennessee is going to win this football game. Appalachian State at Clemson. Oh, man, how much I would love to pick the upset for App State, but they caught Clemson at the wrong time. If Clemson didn't play Georgia in the first game of the year and they played just like Marshall or something and they won, I would take App State in this game. But since Clemson has already been docked points, every single opponent from this game on, they are not going to blink twice because they already got brought to reality. I'm going to make it close. The Mountaineers are going to pull out their stunts against a super tough defense, but I think Clemson's going to win this one in overtime. Even though for whatever reason Appalachian State on those road games, it's just that team, I think Clemson is going to win this one in their home field. They're not going to let this one slip by. Boise State at Oregon. Oregon obviously struggled last week against Idaho, and the question is how are they going to perform against Boise State? And it is really, really scary. A lot of people want to pick Boise State in this one after how poorly Oregon performed in that Idaho game. But I do think Oregon is going to put things together finally. I think they're going to put things together and beat Boise State. But I do think their defense is going to struggle a lot because of Boise State's running back. Their running back is ridiculous. He had 6 touchdowns in his first game and like 200-plus yards of rushing yards. He is absolutely insane for Boise State. And I don't know if Oregon's defense is going to be able to lock up the Boise State offense, but Boise State doesn't look to have the best defense, so I do think Oregon will have an easy time there. But this one will be interesting. In my last game, I felt like I should include it. Is Mississippi State at ASU. Fun fact, ASU had their second largest student attendance in program history against Wyoming. They had 13,500 something students at that ASU game versus Wyoming. The first one was against UCLA in 2014, which we got absolutely obliterated. But Kenny Dillingham for ASU has done something so damn important. He focuses his attention into getting the students to show up to the game and getting the fans to show up to the game. And I think that's awesome. I love that. But more importantly, he got all the fans to show up, 13,500 of them to be specific. And we absolutely steamrolled the team we played. We absolutely steamrolled them. All those fans that watched that game in the stadium and even at home just got such a motivation boost. We haven't seen this from ASU in 2 years. That was such a motivation boost. A lot of people probably want to pick Mississippi State in this game because they have no faith in ASU. But to be honest, man, ASU is going to bring the crowd. I know Mississippi State is fond of playing in tough crowds as they live in the SEC, but this is going to be another type of crowd, dude. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of momentum, but this is also going to be hot for Mississippi State. They're also not new to heat, but they don't know anything about no Arizona heat. They got the humid heat over there. They don't got the Arizona heat as well as those are just factors playing into the game. Ultimately, both of these teams looked very good in their first games, absolutely steamrolling their opponents. I mean, I don't know. I think Mississippi State might have shut out their opponent. ASU pretty much shut out Wyoming. I mean, they scored 7 with 2 seconds left on the clock in the entire game. These teams both handled business. I think these teams are actually super, super even this year. And I'm really fucking scared to predict this one. But I'm going to take ASU by a close, low-scoring margin. Both of these teams seem to have pretty damn good defenses. Offenses, I did really like what I saw from Sam Leavitt for ASU. And ultimately, the running game for ASU is absolutely loaded. They have running back upon running back upon running back. But ASU's defense is missing 2 starting D linemen, which will play into, or like they're missing a starting D lineman and a starting defensive lineman and a starting defensive back. I'm not sure what Mississippi State's missing right now, but I think people should keep their eyes peeled for this game because this will be defining for both of these teams' season. Just like Virginia and Wake Forest, it's defining. This one is very important to these teams. And I just think ultimately this one, you should really tune into this one if you don't care, if you're even listening right now, if you made it this far in the video. I think you should tune into this one because I think this one is actually going to be a pretty damn good matchup. It is 2 very even teams. I think this one is going to be a fun, close matchup. But let me know what you guys all think about your predictions in the comments. Yeah, like and subscribe would help. A comment always helps. And that is all from me. Adios.